The Trump administration today condemning an Iranian launch of a satellite carrying rocket into space. According to the State Department, the launch violated a United Nations resolution. It is not clear if the rocket reached space or if the satellite was deployed. The Joint Space Operations Center says it did not detect any additional objects in space. Joining me now is retired four-star General Jack Keane, a Fox News military analyst. And Jack, I want to talk to you about Iran and North Korea, but let's start with the latest on the military's transgender ban. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I don't think policy by Twitter is the way to deal with something as complex as the Department of Defense and 2 million people on duty serving there. I think what we need to do now is take the time to evaluate really where we are. The military did not come forward and ask for this transgender ban to be lifted. Secretary Carter imposed that in the last 6 months of the Obama administration. And what happened as a result of that, about 2,500 soldiers estimated came forward, soldiers in a generic sense, troops obviously, came forward and changed their gender. They were serving honorably and faithfully before that, and I'm assuming that they're serving honorably and faithfully now. I don't believe that we can break faith with those soldiers by imposing this adverse action on them at this time. I think Secretary Mattis extended a study for 6 months to be able to look at this situation because they knew they had issues associated with transgender. And I think that's a prudent thing to do. I would hope that the President, in talking to Secretary Mattis, would wait for that assessment to take place before he issues a directive, which then the Department of Defense would have to respond to. Without that directive, the Department of Defense does not have to take any action, and they have not sent that directive to it yet.
Yeah, so thoughtful and logical. Thank you for that. Let me move you on to Iran now and this rocket launch. How worrisome is that to you?
Well, the Iranians, here's what their real objective is. The Iranians have never given up on nuclear weapons. The nuclear deal has delayed their acquiring nuclear weapons, and they're fully intent to do it. And they certainly want to have an ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missile capability. And this rocket that was used today could also be used to launch that kind of a missile. That's where they're heading. They look at Russia, China, the United States as great powers, and their cousin, North Korea, all having similar capability. Nuclear-tipped ICBMs. They want that themselves. If they are able to acquire that, Melissa, they will be a global menace and something that we cannot permit to happen, because while North Korea is about self-preservation, Iran is about domination. And they would use those weapons to intimidate Europeans, to intimidate America, to push around Sunni Arabs in the region and lead to a potential huge confrontation. We cannot let it happen.
So what do we do to stop it at this point?
Do what the Trump administration is doing. That is, we have moved away in the Trump administration from a combination and appeasement, which went on for 8 years with the Obama administration as it pertains to Iran. This administration is willing to confront the Iranians for all of their assertive and aggressive behavior. Keep that drumbeat up. Keep it happening. Obviously, today, the Senate passed legislation and sanctions against the Iranians, Russians, and the North Koreans also. We've got to keep this pressure up on Iran, isolate them, put incredible economic pressure on them like we have done once before. That's the best medicine for the time being.